Hello, and welcome to IMA's Inside Talk webinar series. The title of today's presentation is The CFO's Guide to Ever-Growing Datasets, sponsored by Jedox. I'm Margaret Lockery, and I'll be your host for today's Inside Talk webinar. It's a pleasure to have Sue Kwaja as part of our program, and she will be serving as moderator for today's event. Sue is the Business Development Manager at IMA. Hi, Sue. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm pleased to be part of Inside Talk webinar series, and on behalf of IMA, I want to welcome everyone to today's session. At this time, I would like to introduce our featured presenters for today's program. We have Tim Caudill with us. Tim is the Director of Solution Advisory at Jedox, Inc. Tim uses information gathered over myriad implementations in almost every industry to demonstrate how enterprise performance management solutions can be used to advance the digital transformation journey. You may learn more about Tim by reviewing his bio in the speaker bio section of your console. Please join me in welcoming Tim Caudill.
Thanks, Sue. Glad to be here. Welcome, everyone.
Next, I would like to introduce our second featured presenter, Rohan Kapil. Rohan is the Director of Customer Success for Jedox, Inc., Americas, where he helps companies of all sizes enhance executive decision-making and mitigate potential risks to improve business performance. To learn more about Rohan, please take a look in the speaker bio section again, which will be in your console. Please join me in welcoming Rohan Kapil.
Hi, Sue. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be a part of today's program. Welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Before turning the presentation over to our speakers, I would like to go over the learning objectives for today's program. After participating in this webinar, you should be able to discuss the emergence of CFO 4.0 and Finance 4.0 and implement on the finance function. You should also be able to explain financial transformation and the steps for implementation. You'll be able to identify data strategies that can help help your organization achieve financial transformation. And finally, you should recognize the value of using modern techniques to enable proactive decision-making. We're looking forward to an informative presentation. So at this time, I'm going to turn your attention to Tim to begin.
All right. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, everyone, again, for attending. Just as we kick off, I wanted to talk shortly about who Rohan and I are and what we do at Jedox. We help customers in the finance office of the CFO really kind of accelerate and get a great game plan and execute on digitalization. And it's a pertinent topic for today because the thing that fuels just about everything that we do at our jobs is data. So as we help people automate financial processes, which is the first step towards digitalization, we unlock the ability to allow them to collaborate better with the business. So being more consultative, helping people make better decisions, and ultimately all of this leads to transformation, which is providing more value to the business from the office of the CFO. And every office of the CFO is being asked to do this, whether it's overtly or not. And so it's been an exciting journey for us to help many people on this road to being more effective. And we've learned a lot of things along the way that we're excited to share with you today. On that note, just from an agenda standpoint, we're going to start with a little bit of an overview about how we got here, the CFO, Finance 4.0, how this makes sense, how IT makes sense now in the office of the CFO more than it ever has. And then we're going to double click on the data challenges, data strategies, and things to get a great data strategy, a plan to put in place so that you're prepared to execute on the things that the office of the CFO is being asked to do. Okay. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rohan, and he'll have a great chat about the lay of the land right now.
Thank you so much, Tim, and welcome everyone again. We are going to start by looking at what has changed so far. And one of the key questions is, what is CFO 4.0? CFO 4.0 is a different mindset of a CFO that drives the strategy rather than just driving some of the reporting aspects of the usual Office of Finance. Nowadays, what we are seeing is that the complete finance function, the way it worked, has changed more into a business partnership rather than the earlier way of closing the books, getting out reports, and being reactive to what was happening from the past requirements. Nowadays, the CFO is more of a number one business partner of the CEO. And the thought process has really changed from being a cost center or just another department over to being a profit driver. Now, we usually talk about sales as a profit driver, everything else, but finance office is sort of shadowing everything nowadays. And CFO is the first person to drive that change within the organization. So now we move away from the thought process of just reporting on data or doing root cause analysis of our performance. Now it has become more about how you drive the business value at a later stage or in future. And with COVID and all the other changes, it has become even more relevant. Nowadays, you will see that more and more systems are getting automated. And that is an area of focus for a new CFO 4.0 in that way. And that's where you are driving the values by related insight. It's not just about producing a number on a report. It's also about seeing what would be our target, how can we achieve that, how can we collaborate with other departments. And that thought leadership is the essence of CFO 4.0, where you move away, again, from a cost center mindset to a more profit driver mindset as a business partner. At this point in time, I would also like to turn over to you, Tim, to ask a question, because I know that you are very much involved in those initial conversations with various CFOs. So as a part of that decision-making process, I would like to ask you what you see out there in today's date.
Yeah, I think this is spot on. So more is being asked of the CFO than ever. You're absolutely right. If you're still in an organization that's just struggling to close the books and report and maybe do an annual plan, that's not enough anymore. And when people come and talk to me, they have issues like, I need to plan more often. I need to plan more strategically or more granularly. And so people are certainly shifting into that. And the top performing organizations that I speak to are that business consultant. If you walk over to someone in operations and they go, oh, no, it's finance again, you're probably not doing it right. All right. So you want them to be excited that you will help them make great decisions. And that all starts with data as we shift into this data-driven office of the CFO. So I think you're spot on there, Rohan.
Perfect. Thank you, Tim, for the insights. So now we ask the question, CFO 4.0 is there. They are driving the change. But where does that leave us in overall alignment with Finance 4.0? Because if the leader is changing, the department, the culture, everything is changing now. So as you can see, in the old world, we were, again, doing a lot of these manual tasks, which really beg the question, are we financial analysts or are we data bookkeepers? And now all of that has changed because you move away from that mindset into the automation mindset, and you free up that time for the Office of Finance folks to do more value creation by really driving the outcomes in that profit center mindset. And that approach of having that business partnership across the board has made the finance office a central function rather than just more reactive and data collection. So that's where we see a lot of alignment that needs to happen within the companies. We also noticed in the past 4 years, at least 26% of the organizations have moved from between 2018 to 2022 in a more automated fashion of those month-end closes, reporting, and they are more focused on what are those key insights that I can provide to the departments and to my CEO to make it a better next quarter or a better next year. So a lot of planning, forecasting is getting granular in an automated fashion with all the data being collected pretty much in real time to drive those decision making. And that's the focus, again, for the whole Office of Finance to get into that mode. In regards with that, CFO has changed, Office of Finance has changed, where does that leave me as an analyst from my career options? That's always a key question, right? And that's what we are suggesting happens in a new pathway mode. So overall, the way the career pathways have developed or evolved are in these three different brackets, as you can see. So now the accounting has the processes automated, but how do we enable that into a forward planning mode? That has become its own area of expertise. Now you can see that data science, because you are gathering a lot of data, we are really collecting all that data, and then we are interpreting it not manually anymore. We are using these automated tools to bring in all that data so that you can drive that business partnership. In the growing arena of Office of Finance 4.0, you will notice that every company has a lot of different systems. They have ERP systems, accounting systems, everything is there. However, what do you do with all that data? How does that come into picture? How do you streamline that process instead of doing it manually? So a lot of focus is now during that data automation to process it faster, to make those decision makings, create those new pathways in a more technology-enabled world. And that's what we mean by the new Finance 4.0. Now that we have explained all these different items, we come to the core issue. And the core issue is the data itself. So every company that has to go through this transformation, they have to draw up a journey map which is centered around data. There are these different 7 pillars of investment that makes your overall finance transformation. And out of these, many of them are revolving just around the amount of data that we are collecting, the type of data we need for driving insights, and how that transforms itself into a more digital transformative journey of data automation, collaboration amongst departments, and then taking it to the next level of using modern AI and other features on top of it to drive it more automatically for you. And that's, you can see, digital transformation activities, the process redesigning, the workflow creation, generating those useful outputs are some of the pathways or some of the milestones that you will need to cover in terms of that finance transformation due to the amount of data that's coming in from, let's say, a CRM system, which is more like the sales operations planning, and then it's coming from the ERP where your accounting data is. Then how does that relate to my production data that's coming in? Everything needs to be automated as a part of this finance transformation journey. And that's where we are going to next evolve our conversation over this hour into more centered around what that data strategy would look like. Before we get into those details, I will pass it over to Sue, who will introduce a polling question at this moment. Sue?
Thank you so much, Rohan. Attendees should see the first poll question now open on your screen. If you cannot see the poll question, please refresh your browser, which should correct this issue. I would like to remind all participants that you may begin responding to each question as soon as it appears on your screens. Our first poll question is, what is the focus of your current finance transformation project? Your options are A, financial planning, B, accounting ERP, C, billing and payment processing, D, inventory tracking, E, payroll management, F, treasury, or G, none of the above. Please note that after selecting an answer, you must click the submit button, which is located on the right side of your screen, just below the response option, in order for us to successfully record your answer. And looks like we have almost all the attendees responding. So with that, I'm going to turn your attention back to our presenter so we can find out how you guys responded.
All right. Thanks, Sue, and thanks, everybody, for participating. So it looks like there's a little bit of everything going on right now for most folks, but then some people with none of the above have either already done it or are interested in maybe doing it in the future. But financial planning is a huge portion of this, as well as accounting ERP, and that's natural. We are talking about the Office of the CFO here. And so let's double click on these and start talking about how your data strategy can help you with these and some other initiatives that you might be having in your organization. So the data challenge. There was a survey done of CFOs asking what their challenges are, and this is kind of connected to some of the topics that you just highlighted in the poll. And a full 48% of them had data-related issues or challenges. So data fragmentation, data silos, hard to get at data, too many systems, data that's too large. So if these start to ring a bell in your organization, don't be too surprised. It's a pretty common challenge. And that's why what we're going to talk about today with data strategy is key. The other thing on here over to the right in the blue is acquiring and managing talent in the finance team and then aligning with the rest of the business. And so it's interesting that those are connected, because in my mind, they're connected as well. Having poor data and poor data strategy means that you likely have finance people that stay up late into the night cobbling things together in Excel. And that's not why we went to school. I think somebody in the chat asked if colleges are prepping people to perform in this way. And I think they always have. I think this is always the intent of the office of the CFO. But as the data footprint grows, we've been putting our financial analysts in a box where they just become spreadsheet jockeys. And spreadsheets are great. I use them. We all use them. They're never going away. However, when you get to a certain size, your data footprint makes them inefficient, error-prone, and difficult. And I think these 6 topics on the left certainly speak to that. Okay? All right. So how did we get here? I just talked about this data problem, and really it's smart people in finance trying to smooth over everything that's going on behind the scenes with data to present a polished, great experience to the rest of the business, whether that's reporting or helping in the decision-making process. But the Office of the CFO has been kind of a laggard in the IT space with investing in themselves. They usually approve all the checks for IT to buy interesting things, but when it comes to buying things for finance, we've relied on Excel. We've relied on data downloads and emails and phone calls and all kinds of inefficient ways to communicate, because we haven't invested in tools and we don't always have a great data strategy. And so we end up with an ecosystem like this, duct tape and chewing gum holding things together. And, we used to joke about carnival rides being that way, and I never got on them because they're scary. And this is scary in the finance world as well. Things fall apart, you get mistakes, issues are harder to uncover. And honestly, people are less happy. If you've got someone generating the same report over and over again, if they're a smart person who got into this world to be consultative with the business, probably not going to be very happy. Okay, so let's talk about how we replace this duct tape with something a little bit more substantial. But before we do, we have another poll question. Sue?
Thank you so much, Tim. Please, attendees, you now should be able to see your second poll question on the screen. If you do not, then please refresh your browser if you don't see the question. I would like to remind the participants once again that you may begin responding to each question as soon as it appears on your screen. Our second poll question is, what tools are you currently using for data management? Please select all that apply. The options are A, we use data warehouse, B, we use AI, machine learning, and ML, machine learning are used, or both. Option C, mostly Excel. Option D, another tool. Please be sure to click the submit button, which is located on the right side of your screen, just below the response option, so we can successfully record your answer. And with that, let me just see how we're doing. I think it's safe to move forward and see how the audience responded.
All right. Thank you, Sue. Thanks, everyone, for joining. So I am not at all surprised at this, and I might have got the numbers a little wrong, but these bars are directionally appropriate. As I talk to people in the industry, a lot of things are happening in Excel. And we partner with Excel all the time. It's a great tool. But if you've ever felt some of those struggles that I talked about earlier, this is why we're here today, to try to kind of figure out how to get our arms around all this data that's happening. Okay, so with that, data strategy. And we're going to jump in and start talking about data strategy. I'm just going to introduce it here at a high level. It's important when you think about creating a data strategy to incorporate some of the things that I have on this slide. So the very first one is kind of a no-brainer, but it's worth saying. Make sure that the things that you put in place with the data strategy supports the business goals and the appropriate stakeholders. And that sounds like, well, Tim, you don't even have to say that, but sometimes when you get into the weeds of choosing interesting tools with great features and figuring out how things are going to flow, you always have to look at it through this lens. You don't want too much data. You need enough data to support the business goals and the stakeholders involved. You know, and part of that is not allowing this to turn into a giant monster. It should be kind of tightened down and provide just what people need. It needs to have value, and that comes from fueling great decisions. So you can have the best data strategy in the world, efficient systems, efficient transformations, and lots of things that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But if you can't use it to make great decisions, what's the point, right? So we need to think about that as we design a data strategy. Is it going to allow me to get to data quicker? Is it going to allow me to be faster and more accurate when I decide things, when I plan for the future? I think one other thing that's important that you need to think about from the start when you create a data strategy is governance. We need to have probably a cross-functional steering committee so that when you look at tools, making sure that they fit with IT strategy and all of the other overlapping parts of the business, making sure that people have input there, but then also making sure that there's governance about changes, errors, you know, a process in place to handle when things go wrong, or a process in place to handle when you need to change something. And I think that's as key as anything else, is making sure the right people are in place, making the right decisions at the right time. And that leads me to the last point. What we're really talking about here is using data as the glue to connect people with the technology and the processes of the business. And the more that we can streamline and make that smooth and error-free and easy and automated, the better. Okay. So these are some great high-level lenses to think about as you're filling in the details of your data strategy with your partners in IT and other parts of the business. Always come back to these as kind of a North Star. Does it support the business well? Can I make great decisions? Is it trustable, which is the governance part? And is it interacting with the organization in a cohesive way that's adding value? Okay. So to double click on these principles, I think the first one, can't stress enough, and we talked about this in the very first slide that I presented, is automation. All of these manual, repetitive processes that people in your organization are doing are ripe for automation. Again, they're mundane tasks. They don't add a lot of value, and they make people unhappy, frankly. And so if we can automate things that are repetitive and manual, that aren't really a value add, we can shift the capacity of our finance team to being more consultative, to handling tougher issues, to being out there, understanding in the field what's going on. Because, you know, we used to do that by kind of walking and talking to people in the organization, but as the data footprint grows and the organization grows, it's difficult to do that. So it's key to automate that, to shift capacity for people to get that pulse of the business better, to be that consultative person. This next one is key as well, audit and traceability. One of the most important things you can have in your data and your data strategy is trust. The trust that what I'm looking at is real, accurate, and up to date. And the key to doing that is audit and traceability. We need to know when there's an error. We need to have automated alerts. We need to be able to see when people have interacted with the data, when something's been changed, when another file's been uploaded. If we don't have that, we're never going to have that trust in the data that we need. And if we don't have trust in the data, then people are going to be back to Excel trying to figure it out on their own, and it's going to put you back in that hole of manual labor. This one I kind of spoke about earlier a little bit, but this balancing act between flexibility and complexity. A lot of people like to sit down and think of every single question in the world that can answer and build a data strategy around that. And that's fine. But the more that you build into it, the more data that you have, the more places that you have to look and go, the more complex it is. And that becomes harder to maintain, harder to administrate, and it risks that trust. You might have everything perfect, but if it's so complex that people don't know where to go, it's not going to be used, it's not going to work, and it's not going to have that trust. And I think this last point is key, and we'll talk about this too, is investment in tools. You will need tools to have a great data strategy. A DIY approach in Excel can work for a while. Like we said, Excel is a great tool, but it's not really the tool for data warehousing, for example. It's not really the tool for ETL, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Rohan, you know, as you're out there talking to our customers, does this resonate with the things that they're struggling with, the things that they care about?
Yes, absolutely, Tim. These are the essence of all my conversations at the end of the day with the CFOs, with everyone involved in that process. And automation is, of course, the first area. But the main issues that comes when you actually dive into automation is that I have too much data at my fingertips, and half of that data is not even clean. My transactions are old, my forecasts are wrong. So how do we connect everything becomes a part of the conversation. And I'm surprised, even over my short career, over 15 years, how this conversation has changed from just automating the reporting to how many data sources do we need to connect to and bring the data in, how will we clean it, how will we change the behavior of people who are involved in that process. So definitely a data strategy is the first thing that even Office of Finance now, along with their IT folks, is discussing and very deeply involved with, because everything revolves around a business process. And definitely these 4 points are coming up every time I'm speaking to the customers that we have here.
Awesome. Thanks, Rohan. So with that, we're going to dive in a little further and talk about some of the tools and things that you might need to help implement a good data strategy. So the first one that you should really think about is cloud infrastructure. This is not a new topic. We've been going to the cloud for more than a decade now, I believe. But when you think about the tools that you want to pick, the places where this data needs to live, cloud infrastructure is the answer. There are some exceptions to that, but typically the cloud is where you want to be with your data strategy, with your data footprint, with your data tools. Some of the reasons are a larger footprint. So you don't need to buy the biggest database in the world and stick it in the basement and hope that you never exceed the capacity. There's very much a scalable capacity idea where you can get the computational power that you need, the data storage power that you need on demand without capital investments and scoping and then hoping that your business doesn't change and you have to buy a different computer. It's all there for you. That elastic provisioning, both from a computational and a size footprint, is key. I think the other thing is security and data protection. We're talking today about data. Data has value. We're talking about unlocking the value. Think of it as a big bag of money. You don't want to sit that at the bus stop. We need to have really tight, secure protection for your data. And that means failover sites in different regions in case something happens to a data region that you're using primarily. The best security techniques in place. All of these things come with a move to the cloud automatically because the cloud vendors have taken care of all of this for you. And they take care of more than that. You actually outsource the IT personnel needed to maintain this. And why that's key is in the past, when we handled these things on our own, you would have an IT person that was responsible for database maintenance and connections to it and things like that. But they likely had other responsibilities. And they likely were schooled in lots of different things, lots of different competing issues. Here we have people that are hyper-focused on making the best experience, the safest experience, the most robust experience, and that's all they do all day long. So they hyper-focus on making sure this is exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, and you don't have to worry that you have the right guy or gal working on this. You've got professionals that do this all day long, okay? So sizing, elasticity, and the best and the brightest running your infrastructure, okay? What do we put in the cloud? Well, the first thing to think about is a data warehouse or data lake. And when we did our poll, many of you are using those as we speak. Some are not. This is where we can go and deploy our data strategy to create that one source of the truth that we've talked about so people believe what they see. We also want to use it to connect to lots of different systems to break down that silo. That one source of the truth isn't one source of the truth for your ERP. It's one source of the truth for your ERP, your HR system, your CRM. All of the things that we talked about that make up that data footprint will be here in your data warehouse. And it's a one-stop shop where people can easily get what they need to make better decisions and report better. Okay. The next one is ETL. And if you don't know what ETL stands for, it stands for extract, transform, and load. And it's kind of an umbrella term that talks about lots of different software that's in the marketplace that allows us to tap into data in various systems, if necessary, transform it into a format that fits into our data strategy, and then parking it in that format either in real time or continuously updating it as we go. And this is kind of the glue that will hold all of your tools together in your ETL strategy. It can connect in lots of different ways to lots of different things, as simple as flat file, uploading a CSV file, to direct connections into database sources with some other jargon like API and other things like that. The details aren't as important as the results. And an ETL is going to be a part of any data strategy. When you think about choosing an ETL tool, there are lots of different factors that go in here. One, you may have people in your organization now that know a specific tool. And if it's a good enough tool, maybe you just want to leverage that because it's a low hurdle for you to put one in place and use it. When we talk about the office of the CFO, it's also important that you can understand and use these tools yourself. So you don't necessarily want to get in a position where you have to put a ticket into IT to consume data. That's just not efficient. So as a CFO looks at their data strategy, this will be a point where they want to get involved and make sure that they at least understand what's going on in this world and make some decisions about how much of this we want to offload to IT and how much of this we want to take on in-house in finance. And we deal with customers that span the gamut from 100% finance-led to 100% IT-led and everything in between. I think the key, whether your IT department handles this or whether the finance department handles this, again, is self-sufficiency. You don't want to have to call and make an investment in professional services, for example, to tweak some data or to add some more data. And ETL is the tool that we do that with. Okay. This is a big one, AI and machine learning. And again, much like the cloud, we've been talking about AI and machine learning for a long time now. And in fact, 70% of enterprises expect to implement some form of AI in the next 12 months. Now, in the past, and when this started becoming more prevalent, it was something for really large corporations that had data science teams. Now, modern AI tools are available to finance folks, available to really all parts of the organization in easy to use and understand ways. And they can help us greatly in the data strategy realm. So data preparation, that transformation I talked about, understanding what needs to happen, what's coming, but more importantly, or just as importantly, is error identification. So machine learning has become adept at looking at a million of something, which is more than I can look at, and picking out issues and outliers in data and surfacing them in real time to people so that we can manage the quality here in ways that the human brain can't, because the data sizes are growing and growing and growing. And AI can help us manage those giant pools of data with these automated tools. And the best AI is easy to use. If somebody has to call in an engineer or something to show you the AI, it might not be the tool for you. Look for some wizard-based approaches in ways that make AI usable and easy to you, because they exist in the marketplace and they'll help you greatly with your data quality and strategy. I think the other thing to keep in mind with tools is the organizations who do this the best have high levels of involvement in the rest of the organization. People running their own reports and queries, people creating their own visualizations. And so as you get your data strategy in place with the data warehouse, you'd have the best one in the world, but if people can't get to the data, visualize it, explain it, run reports on it, it's not going to really unlock the value of your data, okay? So we want tools that are dedicated to visualizations, or hybrid tools that allow you to visualize and input data. Think budgeting and planning, for example. Query tools that make it easy for people to get at the data. And again, much like AI, when you're looking at tools like this, the principles are easy to use, high adoption because it's simple, and also high levels of self-sufficiency. The world moves too fast now to rely on consultants in the IT department. You need to be able to make your own reports and change things in real time as you go. Okay. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about common issues, and I think, Rohan, you were going to speak to this, if I recall.
Yes, I shall take over, give you a breather. So in terms of the data strategy that Tim talked about right now, there are always going to be challenges, and we see them in our real world all the time. We will go through those challenges now, and how do we see some resolutions in place And then we will talk also about some of the examples as we go through these different areas. Now, before we do that, of course, we would like to ask your opinion on some of those data challenges. So Sue, over to you. Please go ahead, explain the poll.
Thanks so much, Sean. Attendees should see the third poll question now open on your screen. Our third poll question is, what is your organization's biggest data challenge? Your options are A, poor data quality, B, difficulty accessing data, C, multiple systems, D, too much data, E, different views of data, F, data visualization, or G, something else. Please note that after you select your answer, you must click the submit button. And with that, actually, before I turn it over to you, Rohan, can you tell us, how do you think our audience will respond to this question? What do you see out there as the biggest data challenge?
With the growing data points these days, I do think multiple systems, too much data, these are the main ones that I see. And due to this, a little bit of interconnection is there with the data quality as well in terms of driving the decision, definitely. Yeah.
All right, let's move forward and see how our audience responded.
Yes, absolutely. So this is pretty much in line with what we see as well and what I just stated. Multiple systems have become a big issue. We have a system to do reporting. We have a system to do planning, budgeting. We have a system to do our accounting. We have a system for pretty much everything across the board. And then that becomes its own challenge because these are literally silos which are not talking to each other. And we help resolve these by the data strategy portion that Tim talked about. Using that data integrator or data integration, which he spoke about, ETL, which is a core component of everything. So pretty much in line with what I was suggesting as well and what we often see in our conversations. With that, I'll move on to how these issues are being resolved in today's date and time. Now, when we talk about a poor data quality issue, now when you have multiple systems, let's take CRM system, Salesforce, for example. We open that system up over to all the salespeople, and then they are creative, and then they enter all the different types of data into it, which might not be useful or which might not be true to that extent because it might not turn into a revenue stream later. And that becomes a data quality challenge for Office of Finance to deal with from a projection standpoint. So it is definitely one of the key areas to solve for by doing a root cause analysis. We need to see and go down the path of where we are getting that wrong data from and how do we either change the behavior, put some remedial processes, as the second point say, in places by restricting some access or having some mandatory field and not calculating some others. So whenever we try to do the data mapping or data strategy planning with the customer, we are always trying to create one single source of truth. And that single source of truth is then used for all the calculation. So for example, now no more Excel budget final one, budget final reviewed final one. So no more of that needs to be done because you need to take care of the data quality by automating these systems and bringing that one source of truth as well. And we'll talk about it a little bit more as we move forward. But before I do that, Tim, in your experience, how much is this poor data quality challenge coming up in your conversations with the customers?
Very regularly. And I mean, just to tell you a story, we had a client come to us with a reporting process that took them 6 days every month. So they had a finance team cranking out reports that took 6 days. And a huge part of that was they had to cobble together lots of data. And when they came to us, it was not only about fixing how long that it took, it was that they had made a big mistake. They didn't have one source of the truth. They went into a boardroom and we had two sets of data going on different spreadsheets. And if you've ever seen a board meeting get derailed, there's no faster way to do it and confusion about what numbers are right and the ensuing conversations that come after that. So we were able to help them with their data strategy, shrink that reporting down to a couple days, and then they shifted the rest of it for more analytics and more additive things. And so that's just one example, but basically everybody I talk to when they start on the automation journey, on the transformational journey, are looking for better data, one source of the truth, more consistent quality data. So it's a theme that almost everyone has.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim, for the insight. And then developing on what Tim was saying and now moving on to the next slide, the next common issue that we face is how do we access this data? Now, in the earlier days, how do you access data? You always just put a password on an Excel file in an email, and then you share the password, and that is how you access the right data. Then we moved on from accessing that to a SharePoint where different people can automate and input all the data in one area. But then there was so much data that it cannot be contained. There is a limitation to using Excel. There is a limitation in using these different areas, and not everyone has access to every file online. So what we suggest as a step to be done in that data strategy is considering a data warehouse or a data lake these days. These terms have been around for a long time, and now is the time when people have really started investing into these areas to bring all that data together. So what is a data warehouse? Just like you have a warehouse for pretty much everything for your inventory, a warehouse for a data is basically a place where you have everything coming in. And a lot of these data warehouses together make up a lake, which is a data lake. And from an Office of Finance perspective as well, this is an important term to understand, because at the end of the day, if you want to know all your revenue details, you do not need access only to the invoices. You also need access to the pipeline or the projection that is coming in. And same goes with your costs as well. Gone are the days when you were just spreading out salaries, calculating something, and there are your costs. It's much more driver-based, and those driver-related data is being stored in these data warehouses to then take care into another integrated solution, which is probably based on the cloud. We are seeing that a lot of companies are investing into cloud. Of course, we have been moving to cloud for a while, and this has become an industry standard. And the reason for investing into cloud is you take away the proposition of maintaining a server in-house and then reaching out to IT to restart it and doing all those things, or, oh, I have run out of memory. How do I take care of that? So cloud really takes all that pain away. And then comes the software tools on top of these cloud infrastructure and the data warehouse that helps you do everything. So on your phone, you have apps at the moment that are helping you do everything. Same goes with the software tools. I want to use AI. AI should not be coding anymore. Nobody codes these days. Most of the people are dragging and dropping stuff around. And that's where these types of software tools, let's say for reporting, for financial planning, budgeting, forecasting, everything falls into place for Office of Finance. And then, since all of that is automated, you can manage the security in a very streamlined way rather than those passwords that are being sent over emails, and you really have no security at the end of the day. Yeah. So that's one of the difficulty accessing data that comes into picture and how to solve it. The next one that we talked about is the one where all of you are facing a challenge. That's multiple system. And that again connects with what I was just mentioning, that you need to have a data warehouse and all your tools, whatever you are using for different areas, should be driven by connecting it to that one source of truth. And that is done using the data integrators that modern softwares provide so that you can automatically connect and bring in the same data point across all your different softwares. It cannot be that a sales guy is projecting $1 million in one place and 100,000 in another place. All your projections will be wrong if something like that happens. And we come across the data discrepancy so much that we have started realizing that having multiple systems is something you cannot get away from, but having single source of truth for your data is something you can definitely do. So these days, what we are always suggesting in the data strategy as the first thing is to make sure that you map out all your different storage areas for data and try combining them into a meaningful format in a data warehouse. And then take your data warehouse and then connect it to all the different systems so that everyone is seeing the same source of truth. From multiple systems, and somebody asked this question earlier as well, is too much data good? Is too much data bad? That's always a big question. Now, we are in 2022. There is nothing like less data. Everything is too much. We are tracking everything at the end of the day. And it's a good thing. The good thing about too much data is you get better at predicting stuff. So now when Tim talked earlier about AI, you can feed all that data and let the system do all the computing for you and give you a trend of how do you see the market move. We are, in a way, predicting what is based out of a lot of these different data points in the past. For example, we worked with a vendor who was trying to calculate how many deliveries will I make in the 9 upcoming months. Now, how do you calculate something like that? So we were able to help them by getting the weather information and looking at the past trends of how many deliveries in a weather they are taking, combining that data point and projecting it to 99% accuracy. Something like that is not possible if you don't have the right data points. So you can, or in the earlier part, like decades ago, we were using a lot of just static data. But now we are constantly evolving that data set. We are giving external drivers into it and then trying to project quite a lot of these financial KPIs based on the real-time data that we get from the market. And that's why these points around too much data is a common problem, but we need to resolve for it because it helps in a lot of areas. And Tim, I would like to ask you the question as well, that in your thoughts and your conversations, how do you navigate through having too much data? What are the implications of having too much data and how you resolve for it?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it comes up often. And typically when people cry uncle and come and talk to us, their Excel is crashing. So they're reaching the limits of the amount of data you can put in a pivot table and looking for another answer. And I think you're right, Rohan. Data footprint's not going to get smaller. It's going to get bigger. So pre-working these issues and getting a strategy in place is key. And I see it with almost everybody I talk to. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. And that's the thing. In terms of the data, it's ever evolving. So definitely that's a good insight. Moving on from here. Now comes the point about that common issue of having different views of data. We talked about a data warehouse earlier. And usually what happens in a lot of our meetings that we go into and we are doing business requirement gathering, the first thing we see is that the report that 2 other people are presenting, they are contradicting each other. Somebody is saying 9 million in revenue. Somebody is saying, no, it's 8.25. While it's a small number, it makes a big impact on the shareholder value at the end of the day around your revenues. So it creates a problem that we try to resolve with this data warehouse or data lake. In reality, a lot of vendors out there are trying to resolve for that problem, even in real time. As soon as somebody buys a Starbucks coffee, in real time, that invoice is making its way to closure and being counted towards the final number as a projection out there. So definitely it has gotten very granular, and all these companies, be it the retail sector, be it the education sector, any one of these different industries, as you may call it, or organizations, they are utilizing a data warehouse at the end of the day. In fact, the data lake concept arose from these Fortune 500 companies like Facebook, everyone who's taking in that real-time data, putting it and mapping it with all these other data points. And at the end of the day, what comes out of it? There comes out to be financial strategies, financial reporting, making sure that you understand what type of product out there will make the most impact in terms of your financial KPIs. So everything from a value perspective really comes together when you invest in a data warehouse and drive that automation. Auditing is a big concept as well. I don't know who changed my value from $1,000 to $10,000. You are not really able to track that in Excel or in different multiple systems to drive to one single source of truth. But the data warehouse with all these modern systems like FP&A, budgeting, reporting systems, they track every click or really every data volume change that is happening. So you can really say that yesterday I changed the data, today the other person did that, and you can also see why they did that. So auditing is also becoming a very big standard. And with cloud infrastructure, of course, it's the most secure because everything is all different industry segment related, like SOC 2, SOC 3 compliances are there. So you need to make sure that the auditing procedure can take place as well. And Tim, anything from your side to chime in on the different data sets or the views of the data?
No, but I think this is, and we've talked about it, quite a bit today. It's key, and issues here generate conversations with folks like us about how to solve problems, and this is where a lot of confusion and pain can come from. So, definitely a normal thing.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Moving on, the last portion is the data visualization. There, when I started my journey or my career, there used to be a big report with 15,000 rows of data and around 50 columns. And I was asked to analyze that. Under no circumstances it is possible for somebody to go over 40 columns of data very, very quickly and look at the trends and map it to an insight and then provide a very crucial piece of information. It takes time. And that's where data visualization tools come in. There are many tools out there, and when we are a part of that group, who provide you with that visualization where instead of crunching numbers, the system is doing that for you. And what you get as an outcome are those intimate results that you need or intimate insights that you need to really see what are those focal points for you or your company that you can really deep dive into, make them better, or even innovate in those areas and then drive further expansion of the organization. And that's where these data visualization, business intelligence tools, FP&A tools, EPM tools, these are all the nomenclatures out there in the market of different types of tools that are providing you with that capability. And these, and as the saying goes, the technology in professional life has evolved so much due to the fact that in personal life, we are using things like Facebook, we are using things like Twitter. So the user experience has become much, much more sophisticated, intuitive, and better over a period of time. And it makes sense to invest into those visualization tools as a part of your data strategy so that you can not only report out numbers, but you can actually visualize them and discuss what should be your next steps in terms of that business value proposition. With that, we come to an end of the data strategy solving common issues section, and I would pass it back over to you, Tim, for the next area.
Thanks, Rohan. So just in summary, some key takeaways. One, and you likely know this, data has enormous value. Value in making decisions, value in communication, value in understanding where you're at and where you're going. And so a robust strategy is important. And while we didn't get down to the details and specific products and methodologies, that's on purpose because everybody's pretty unique. The idea that you need to have this strategy, but also underpin it with investments in tools and processes, will generate a large ROI in your organization. Now, it may be hard to quantify ROI. Sometimes it's difficult to quantify what making a mistake is, if you don't know what the mistake is and it's in the future, but it's there and there's an enormous value there. And as we put these things into place, I can't stress enough, always think about the business first. What do you need to run the business better? What do you need to solve these data issues that we talked about? What do we need to empower the Office of Finance to be the consultant that it was always meant to be? It's becoming harder to be that without these tools as data sets grow. And so to succeed and be a great finance team and move away from that cost center mindset, we need to unlock the value of data with strategies and techniques like we talked about today. With that, I think we're at the last poll question, Sue.
Thank you so much, Tim. This has been really insightful. Attendees, you should now see your fourth question now open here on your screen. The last question is, what best describe your organization's data strategy? Your options are A, we have a clear strategy that incorporates much of what we have covered in this session. Your option B is data strategy is a goal, but it is not yet defined or implemented. Or option C, we load data into Excel and hope for the best. Please be sure to click the submit button so we can record your responses. And let me also just remind all participants to send us your questions and comments by typing them into the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen. And we have actually received quite a few questions, so I just do want to let you know that we will go over 2 to 3 minutes once the presentation concludes so that we can get to some of the questions that were asked. And with that, I think we can go ahead and move to the next one. Next slide, please, for the results.
There we go. So the last one I'm not surprised at. A lot of people are still using Excel. It's something we experience every day. But, you know, while 31%, 32% have something in place, a lot of us are still in the planning stages. And so hopefully some of these principles you can work into that strategy as you produce it. So it's important to reach out to the experts as needed. But you should be equipped to at least get a framework of questions and ideas together as you talk to them to guide your investments as you go forward. All right.
Okay, with that, thank you so much, Tim and Rohan. Attendees should see the evaluation survey now open on your screen. If it did not open, please click the evaluation survey icon at the bottom of your screen to access it. We appreciate your feedback, so please complete the survey while we address some of the questions that we have received. So our first question is, how much time does it take to implement a data strategy?
I'll take that one, Rohan. It varies. So unfortunately, there's no hard and fast, 30-week program. It might exist out there, but I'm not sure it would meet your needs exactly. And so I think that's the key. Making a strategy can be quick, right? You can put a strategy together in a week. Executing that strategy and getting the proper alignment is where it can take some more time. And so we see people in a 3-month window creating and implementing a data strategy, but it can go a much longer depending on the complexities of your particular organization. Getting a strategy together, though, is key. Whether it takes you 3 months or 3 years, having those guiding principles in place keep you out of trouble and keep you focused. So I think a good estimate is 3 to 6 months to actually not only create it but implement it. But again, that depends on your organization, the different stakeholders, and how long they take to make decisions, and the complexity of what you're looking to do.
Okay, our next question is, what should the CFO be most focused on in the current upcoming digital age?
Do you want me to take that one too, Ron?
No, I can answer that. I can help there. In terms of today's focus from a digital transformation age or digital age, I think automation should be the key focus if it has already not been implemented. All those different areas which are requiring a lot of manual intervention should be automated. That's always going to be the first challenge to cover. You already noticed in our polling questions, a lot of people are using Excel. that needs to go away as the first step in your data strategy. And once you do that, then you talk a little bit higher level. Okay, now I've taken care of having these Excel things automated. Now I can look a little bit outward into other areas and collaborate with them. How do I get that process? And that really, again, coming back to the main point, automation is the focus. Whatever can be automated should be automated with control and balances in place. It's not just like, okay, I have automated this, now there is no area to look into. Really, you can start focusing with certain balances and checks in place onto more deeper insights using that. So automation would be my best answer as the beginning point. Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right, so our next question is, how do you feel about Power Query for Excel as an ETL tool?
I missed that.
Can you repeat that, Sue?
Sure. How do you feel about Power Query for Excel as an ETL tool?
Yeah. Power Query is a good tool from an Excel viewpoint. If you are starting just querying some data, and in your query you are creating all the filters, all the mappings to get the right data set, it's a good tool to start with. However, with Excel and the Power Query, you will generally run into limitations. And the limitations is around how much data can you crunch? How much data can you really code when you have different lines of businesses? So for example, I would like to know what happened across 3 business lines, across 20 accounts or 40 accounts from an expense viewpoint for the year 2014 till today. I'm saying this in 30 seconds, but to type a query and then to run it on a large data set that involves variety of systems is a big task by itself. And while you can start doing that, the best practice is to, again, go to a tool that is doing this in microseconds rather than really typing what you need. So that is why we always suggest that you can use these Excel-based tools. But the main limitation in Excel even today is that you cannot go above, let's say, 15 million rows of data, whereas a simple data warehouse can have billions and billions of rows of data, which are real-time populating the insights for you. So it depends on the size of the business, your data strategy. It can be a good point, but for more matured, heavier businesses out there, of course, you will run into more troubles often when you are just using Power Query as your massaging system. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask one more question here. What are the key challenges organizations face in their journey towards implementing a data strategy?
I'll take that, Tim. When you're implementing a data strategy, the first, there are 2-3 main roadblocks. One, I see a lot of companies in a denial mode as well, still. They think we have already set up a data strategy because the IT guys are working on the data strategy. Data strategy is not something that is only done by a single group of people. Data strategy by itself needs a collective approach from different departments to discuss and come up with something that is going across the board. And just to bring different ideas onto the table to collaborate is the main biggest challenge till date, because silos will lead to silos, even on the cloud or on Excel. So we have to have that mode where every part of the company understands that there is a data strategy problem across the board, and we need to now collaborate. So I do see that as the biggest challenge. And then, of course, the next challenges are coming on which tools to invest in, how do we select a tool, what are my top 3 priorities. So just making sure that you are first accepting that we need a cross-functional collaboration with Office of Finance, and then making sure that you are, if there are a wish list of 10 items, then you are taking the top 3 across the board, which are common ones, and resolving for them first. Phasing it out is definitely the key to resolving this issue, as well as recognizing it earlier. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Rohan. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to our host, Margaret.
Thanks, Sue. At this time, I'd like to thank our presenters, Tim Caudill and Rohan Kapil, for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. We're very appreciative that they've made time for IMA and for our audience today. And also, thank you, Sue Kwaja, for moderating today's event. I want to again thank Jedox for sponsoring today's webinar and thank all of you for your participation in today's event, your commitment to IMA, and your professional development through IMA's Insight Talk webinar series. I look forward to spending time with you again soon when we'll enjoy some more Insight Talk.